Welcome back to the March to Million podcast. Today we're continuing our WSN mini-series, the training series created specifically for attorneys, advisors, and professionals who want to serve clients at the highest possible level. If this is your first episode joining us, the purpose of this series is simple: to help you see what clients can't see on their own, and give you the tools to close the planning gaps that traditional advisors overlook. Every conversation in this mini-series is built to sharpen your mindset, deepen your skill set, and strengthen the way you communicate the 4D approach that makes WSN different. Document, defend, determine, deliver. And today's conversation tackles one of the biggest opportunities in our entire profession: business owners. Business owners are driven, successful, and incredibly skilled, but they're also the most overlooked, under-coordinated, and underprotected group in the marketplace. If you can understand their world and articulate their blind spots better than they can, you instantly become the most valuable advisor in their life. So in this episode, Greg and I are diving into the business owner opportunity, the hidden planning gaps, the bag of tricks diagnostic, the legacy first hook, and how you can start 5 meaningful conversations this week with the right business owners in your orbit. All right, Greg, I'm excited for this one because you have said before that business owners are uniquely underserved when it comes to planning. So why do you see them as such a major opportunity for WSN advisors?
So, Patrice, first of all, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for accepting the mantle here today. And one of the things with WSN is that it grew out of my initial vision of wanting to serve people like my dad, who was a small business owner that was not given the right type of guidance from the financial world, the business world. His tax attorney and all those people did not really treat him like a partner. Everything was different transactions, and that left gaps. And when I first started practicing law, I found out early on what can happen when there is proper coordination between the various disciplines and how they can really improve the lives of a small business owner like my father, like many of our listeners, attorneys out there. This is information we're going to talk about today and opportunities to talk about today that kind of run the spectrum that many people that can be helped are not aware of. And so that's why I'm so excited to have this conversation today, to share this message with the listeners out there in WSN, because they can expand this and really impact many, many people.
All right, well, let's dig deeper into these hidden gaps. When you look at business owners, what are the major planning holes you see over and over again?
So there are a handful of recurring gaps. And the first one I'm going to talk about is, the entity structure trap. And right now I've got clients that I'm working with right now that fit this bill particularly well. The founder of this business was he was a professor, but he founded it as kind of a side hustle. And for 30 years, he built this business as a subchapter S corporation. And he has not been working it. He passed away. His widow had been receiving all of the income, and she wasn't working the business. So they were writing big checks for taxes when all the work was being done by other people, when by restructuring that business, we're able to save thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars of taxes. So the entity, and this happens whether it is an S Corp, C Corp, LLC, whatever, something that you set up years ago, as the business grows, may no longer be the right entity for you to go forward. And just kind of letting the status quo run can cause families to lose a lot of potential value.
Are most owners aware that those decisions that they made years ago really they're not valid right now?
Many times, and this family again is a perfect example. And I see this over and over and over in my practice that, first of all, the legal fee of setting up a business is something that people don't like to go back to, right? Many times they don't want to see a lawyer. Go figure, right? People don't want to see a lawyer and pay them. But that leads to that inertia. And without having somebody that is a guide there, and candidly, many people that set up businesses as attorneys really don't know the tax implications that come on down the road and the other options are out there. So it's all kind of geared towards the status quo. And change, it can be hard.
Mm-hmm.
And change sometimes needs to be brought into the conversation. And that's where, an attorney in an estate planning conversation or an advisor in an investment planning conversation can really change the script and change the future for these families.
I was just going to say, change may not be understood.
And change just for change's sake, right?
Right.
Are you just doing this because you're going to charge me a legal fee to do this? Or are you doing this for something that's going to benefit my family? Why should I do this? And again, using that family as an example, it was, 30 years of going from a consulting business to a going concern with, dozens of people working for it. Very few businesses get to that point. And unfortunately, as they try to struggle getting from year to year, they don't come up for air and talk to professionals to help them see that there are other opportunities out there for them now to take advantage of, now that they have reached a point of, shall we say, permanence for their business.
Well, you've got that permanence. I mean, that's what every business owner, I think, wants. Hey, I built this thing. It's growing. It's great. It's permanent. When do I get out? How do I get out? Do they even think about getting out?
Most of them don't. Well, they think about it, but it is a goal. And again, we're talking about smaller businesses, right? 10 million or less, right? That, their ultimate goal, when you ask them what's going to happen, what are they going to do for retirement and those type of things, their ultimate goal is, I'm going to find someone to buy it. But they don't do anything along the way to prepare the business so that it can be bought. And very few of those businesses can be sold for a reasonable return on investment. So what we find is the entrepreneur that's been in business for 10, 15, 20 years, that has built a good business, is not able to sell it for the type of value he thinks that he can sell it for, can't find somebody that is willing to take it internally, that is able to run the business. So as we look at the graying of our professional class that's going on right now, there are so many businesses out there right now that are going to close because of a lack of true leadership when the business owner passes away or simply retires and closes the door. And without a coordinated exit strategy, this is what happens. And this is where professionals can step in and talk to the clients about that, and to build that exit strategy, and to bring together some of the tools that we have with WSN to be able to facilitate that exit strategy.
About how many years before an owner thinks he might want to sell should he or she start thinking about this?
Yeah, that's one of the interesting things. Yeah, I'm a member of Strategic Coach, and so I hang out with lots of entrepreneurs. And part of the mantra of that group is to create a self-managing company. And when you take the steps necessary to prepare your business for sale, you're making the same steps as is necessary to make it self-managing. There's a real correlation there. And what that typically also does is makes it easier to run from a distance, reducing the pressure to sell by being able to look on the horizon, say, hey, I do want to be out of here in 3-5 years, because it's going to take a while to get things aligned to do that. And what are the things I need to do to get from here to there? And many times, putting those things in place, I've got many friends in that group that this has happened to, that they put those pieces in place like that. And now they're enjoying their work life even more than ever. They've got a asset that's growing, and now they're looking at a bigger, expanding future, all because they've taken the time to work and develop that exit strategy.
What are some of these exit strategies that you've seen that seem to work the best?
Obviously, we have to look at the terminal exit strategy.
Mm-hmm.
What do we do if our plans are different than God's plans for us, right? And that's the typical buy-sell agreement that that every business has to have some form if they want it to not just fully dissolve when they pass away. And what I do find that's kind of the third gap is that people that don't have those, or if they have them, they're unfunded. And so that we end up in situations where, the business is run by an estate to try to recoup value because there was not any mechanism for liquidity to take care of that.
Oh.
And so that's one tool. But when you start thinking broadly about what that future looks like and trying to develop that exit strategy, then that's where an advisor can come in, be it a tax advisor, an investment advisor, insurance advisor, or just a business advisor, and say, hey, listen, you have, for example, these 3 key employees. Can this business run without them? No. Do you want them to benefit from a sale or whatever? Yes. And then we can start structuring, packages, golden handcuffs, if you will, right? That will keep those key employees in place so the business can continue. And that they now, and depending upon those whole planning conversations, that's what makes this such a wonderful opportunity for a WSN attorney to have these conversations, because you're building that team for them, and you're able to start putting different financial pieces together on how do we, keep the people there that are happy. How do we add more value to the employee base and all those things? And we've talked about these in some of the prior episodes, things like captive insurance and employee plans and ESOPs and things like that those can be put in place when you're thinking from the end in mind what the exit strategy is.
Talk to me about people who don't have an exit strategy, but have a going enterprise, and we consider them paper rich, but cash poor.
Many entrepreneurs find themselves in that position.
Yeah.
I just turned 60 a few months ago, and I've been building a law practice. I've been building this financial advisory business. I've been building WSN, all these companies I've been building, and I continue to build. But I'm like many entrepreneurs that wake up one day and they see the fruit of their labor, that they have these businesses that are now mature, that are now generating cash flow, generating predictable income, and they have no retirement assets or anything like that really match that. They are cash poor from that perspective. But that's one of the things that knowing the tools that are in the toolbox, you're now able to say to that entrepreneur, okay, so you're now in a spot where you finally have kind of won the race. You're generating, well over 6 figures more than you need to every year. And it's now just going off the taxes. Here are some tools that we've got that we can start parking that for yourself for the future. So if you don't end up gracefully going out, if the market takes you out or whatever, yes, something to show for it. And you're able to save tremendous amounts on taxes if you do things the right way at this point in time, both during your lifetime and what you leave behind. That otherwise you would just kind of fritter away from the good fortune of now having this good cash flow, but not have much savings.
And then going beyond that, another step. You have your business. You don't want to just sell it. You want a successor. You want someone who's going to take it and love it as much as you did. When do you start having that conversation? How do you find these people? And do you ever really have to talk to other people about this? People who would not necessarily want to be the successor, but might be jealous.
We are finding, I try to find that person for my business. I've been trying to find that for the last 6 years, right? For all of my businesses. How do I find that person to be part of the team that will be that successor? And one thing that entrepreneurs are slow to recognize, especially ones that have been successful, like I think I have been, is we are unicorns. There are not that many people out there that are willing to take on the risk. that are able to do what has to be done. For example, a client of mine has several pharmacies throughout the West Virginia area. Is one of the biggest independent pharmacy companies in the state. And he's very humble about what he has done. And I keep reminding him that you're unique. To put together what you put together and built it over the time that you've built it, trying to find somebody that can do exactly what you do, even if we've set up a bunch of different ways to try to fund that and take care of that, that's not probable. And maybe selling it to private equity. Those type of things are out there for companies that become big enough. There are all kinds of horror stories with that if you want it to go on. But that's the reality that we got to deal with. And that's why when we start thinking about exit strategy and all of that stuff, the walking away and leaving it behind to your successor is easier said than done.
And I'm thinking maybe there's an employee who feels he or she wants this business. They can do it. They can run this. And you look at them and you have to think, they can't. How do you have that conversation?
I had to get rid of somebody like that.
Did you?
That felt that they had all the tools that they needed to do that. Shall we say the arrogance of youth that I had at his age as well. But you just learn as time goes on. And it is something that we as entrepreneurs, we tend to map ourselves and others. And I remember having these conversations with other attorneys in one of the legal mastermind groups I was in, and that, and I must have been 2-3 dozen attorneys over the years in $1 million and up practices that I've been talking to and having these conversations about that. And very few of them have been able to find that successor that's going to take over their business. And for many of them, that's why they're still practicing law. And when I talk, and you've talked to lots of people in the financial services world. We talk to those folks out there that are secure, that have built a good financial advisory practice. And it's the same conundrum that to be successful in any of these individual businesses, it takes that entrepreneurial spirit that is a unique blend. And there are just not that many of us out there.
As you say, you're unicorns.
So it's the job of the WSN member, the attorney, the advisor, talking to those business owners to let them understand and give them some grace that, you are special, what you have done. But here's what we need to do because you have built a X dollar value business that is benefiting your family. And if you don't have a natural success, we've got to make sure we capture that value one way or the other. And if you've been trying for years and haven't found somebody that can step into your shoes, then we really need to figure out another way to protect the value of this asset for your family going forward, and for you, for your retirement. It's a different game.
Just curious, how many people have you seen sell their business, walk away, and just go start a new one?
It's when you're in an entrepreneurial world, it becomes a drug. Meaning there's a big difference between somebody that figures out that, hey, I'm an entrepreneur and I've built this business and I've learned these skills and I'm going to take these skills to another business. For them, that's why you hear the term serial entrepreneur, yes. Right? Yes. They go from one to the next because the skills they learn in building one, they now apply to the next one and so on and so forth, which is a completely different bird than the skilled technician, like the client I referenced earlier, 30-year business that being a skilled technician, he grew. And then next thing we know, we've got bringing in a management class on that. And those type of people, that skill doesn't translate to the next business typically, right? So it's just a different bird that once they get, how many metaphors can I throw in your bird bug, right? Well, you hear what I'm saying, right? That they go on to the next one.
Yeah. All right, Greg. Now, one thing our WSN members really love is your bag of tricks. So, talk to me about why this approach works so well with business owners.
So, one of the core learnings for WSN is we're just a few more clearly defined questions away from really improving somebody else's situation. Most attorneys, most advisors will stop one or two questions short of where they need to be. So for example, when we are talking to a business owner, how many attorneys have asked the question, hey, how do you see the next 5 to 10 years unfolding for your business and your family? What has to have happened in those 5 to 10 years for you to be happy?
Oh, to be happy.
And
yeah.
And once they sit back and think about that, then a whole different world opens up, because you're trying to give them some space to not think about the day-to-day problems, but where they want to be, beginning with the end in mind. So you can pull it back into their world. And how do we draw this into it? So that line of questioning has become, very powerful to have very powerful conversations, and here's another one when you're talking about trying to get them to see the gravity of what would happen with their passing. What's one thing about your business that only you understand?
Yeah.
And that opens up so many gaps. And once they start realizing that we've got these problems, now it's, how do we get that? We get the horse to water. Here we go into the metaphor, right? But we got to get some awareness first.
Right.
When was the last time that your buy sell was reviewed? Those type of questions that are out there that need to be asked. Too many business attorneys or just kind of leave it up to the insurance agent to take care of that. And meanwhile, the business guy says, I don't want to talk to my insurance guy. He's going to try to sell me more insurance. And so there is no cohesiveness. And that's really what we talk about with the whole 4D approach that we've got here, getting all of those pieces together, coordinated, so that they're able to realize, okay, here's the purpose for that. Here's the risks that we're trying to take care of. And yes, it makes sense for us to do that. Or here's the opportunity that we have if we're doing this the other way.
Who is responsible for doing that?
Well, that's the big problem. Getting back to early part of the conversation where the attorney is an expense. They don't want to write a check for the attorney because the attorney can't really, shall we say, represent value to the business owner. Just it's a line item when I call, whatever. So they don't want to go there. And again, they're trying to avoid insurance guys because insurance guys are salesmen. They want to avoid them, right? And so nobody's really getting through on a regular basis to those business owners that can talk to them. And this is why we have this training, why we have these methods, so that an attorney can have that conversation and feel confident that we're providing value to the business owner. Because here's how, we're going to be able to save you $100,000 in taxes next year because you're implementing this strategy. We're going to be able to make sure that you have a guaranteed income stream for your retirement because we're putting in this strategy. We're going to make sure that your key people don't leave because we've done this strategy. And so it is your responsibility, WSN attorney, WSN advisor, to have these conversations and open up the conversation.
And it doesn't sound salesy. It's just offering clarity to the client and to the attorney, to the advisor, to the CPA, whoever it is. They're getting some clarity too.
That's what this is all about. The information is floating out there. We're swimming in information. And when you're running a business, trying to balance that against a life, being as busy as we all are, you don't dig into a lot of this stuff. That's what makes the group of Strategic Coach so so special because these are all people that at least once a quarter have taken a day out of their busy schedule to meet and just focus on their business. Okay. And there are other mastermind groups like that, but that's very uncommon for people to do that. And so clarity is what's lacking. And they can start going out in the Google world and try to find things, but they don't know what to look for. So we could show them what to look for, and then they can go Google it.
Now, you did mention clarity, but you also mentioned life, which brings to mind legacy. You've often said legacy is the only language business owners universally respond to. Talk to me about that.
When we build a business, many people look at the members of the business as family. The business is their baby. They've created this. That's the creative nature of an entrepreneur. This is their expressive medium,
Mm-hmm.
As opposed to singing or painting or whatever. This is what they have built, what they want to leave behind one way or the other, whether it is in the form of the business continuing on, which is the preferred for many, the most unlikely for most, but it's value for family and trying to leave that behind one way or the other. As I've mentioned in passing, that this was driven home to me early on in my law practice when I was representing an employee of a business that had went under. And at the time, I thought, wow, this is terrible that this employee is not getting paid X, Y, and Z that they were supposed to be paid. But then I took a step back and saw what had been done by that business, which was a decade-long business, that the owner had followed the rules. They'd taken money out for retirement and other things that were perfectly permissible. And then when the winds of change took that business away, he did not walk away from 30 years with nothing. He walked away from 30 years with a future, with a legacy assured. And I've seen too many business owners walk away from 10, 20, 30 years in a business with nothing to show for it.
Wow. And legacy goes on and on. So what does a legacy first framing sound like when you're having a conversation?
The core of WSN is we're talking about estate planning conversation. And in that context, when properly managed, all of these items flow from. Okay, so starting from that conversation of an estate plan, what do you want to leave behind?
Mm-hmm.
And that's our legacy, right? And how are we going to leave it behind? And so that's starting legacy first. What do you want to leave behind? That what do you want to have in 5 to 10 years? And then what happens if you don't make it there? Okay. That conversation is what drives everything with business owners.
Smart business owners who think ahead. How do you get these people to realize they've got to be smarter and think ahead? Actually, they've made the first step. They've come to you.
Well, unfortunately, we need to make the first step. We often need to go to them. When you start practicing law or you start a financial business or whatever, what's one of the first things that you do? You join the Chamber of Commerce, so you get to know business people, right? And what happens in those Chamber of Commerce meetings? Everybody passes cards around and nothing happens unless you're there for years and years and years. And most people end up getting, at least I did, and getting tired of the whole, hey, can we have a cup of coffee so I can talk to you about my business? Can I pitch you my business? So we build up a Teflon skin, both as the person trying to get the business and the person that's being sold to. And so what we need to do is we need to be human and go out and talk to, or first of all, as an attorney, your own book. How many business clients do you have right now that you've not had this conversation with? How many peers do you know that you can pick up the phone and say, hey, let's have a cup of coffee? Have you thought about legacy? How many people do you know from your church? Maybe you know some local business leaders, past prospects, those kind of things. These are all people that, as we wrap up today, you should be, as a listener, you should be writing down these people. Who can I just have that human conversation with? Hey, Bob, I appreciate what you've done with this business. 20 years, man. You've been through a lot. And what do you want the next 5 years to look like? And how have you set up for what you leave behind? Just curious. And leave it there.
So the opportunities are right there. You just have to tap them.
Just have to tackle them.
Well, as you said, we're kind of wrapping up here, but before we do, what's the one action every WSN member should take after listening to this episode?
Take a yellow legal pad or whatever and ask yourself those questions. Who do I know in my church, my client base, that I can ask that question to? Hey, Bob, I marvel at what you've done with this business. And I'm just curious, what are your legacy thoughts about that? What do you want to do? And just let it hang. Can I have a cup of coffee? Would you be interested in a cup of coffee? Because I think I might have some things to share with you that can really help you get to that destination if you're open to it.
An intentional conversation.
Intentional conversation.
All right. Well, Greg, thank you so much. And for members and prospects alike, use this episode to sharpen how you speak to business owners. It's not about selling. It's about elevating.